Welcome to our series exploring the enigmatic realm of unexplained deaths and mysteries. Join us as we delve into perplexing cases that defy conventional understanding, where each clue raises more questions. Hey, you won't believe what I just learned about. Remember that weird space signal everyone talks about sometimes? The wow signal. Yeah, that one. So get this, back in '77, this guy Jerry Amon was doing his usual space listening gig at Ohio State. You know, searching for aliens and all that jazz. Suddenly, his radio telescope picks up this crazy strong signal. It was so wild, Jerry literally wrote wow on the printout. That's how it got its name. The crazy part, this signal was perfect, like suspiciously perfect for what scientists think aliens might use. It was on this specific frequency tied to hydrogen. Apparently that's the alien chat room of choice or something. For over a minute, this signal just blasted through, way stronger than the usual space noise. And guess where it seemed to come from? Some stars in Sagittarius. Yeah, the Archer dude in the sky. Here's the kicker, they've never heard it again. Not once. They've looked and looked, but nada. It's like the ultimate cosmic one-hit wonder. Some folks are still convinced it was ET phoning home, but others are like, no, probably just some space junk reflection or maybe a comet. There was even this guy a few years back who thought he solved it with some comet theory, but other scientists shut that down pretty quick. Isn't that wild? We might have heard from aliens that one time, and we're still scratching our heads about it almost 50 years later. Makes you wonder what else is out there. Oh.
Have you ever heard of ball lightning? It's this wild atmospheric phenomenon that's been baffling scientists for ages. Picture this: a glowing, floating orb of light that can range from tiny to absolutely massive, just hanging out in the air for a few seconds, or even up to a minute. It's usually spotted during thunderstorms, but some folks have seen it on clear days too. The crazy thing about ball lightning is how unpredictable it is. It can zip around erratically, float in place, or even seem to pass through solid objects without a scratch. Sometimes it just fades away quietly, and other times it goes out with a bang. Scientists have been scratching their heads over this one for centuries, because it's so rare and hard to study. There are a bunch of theories about what causes it. Some think it's got something to do with silicon particles in the air, while others are looking at electromagnetic waves, or even tiny carbon structures. The thing is, we still don't have a solid explanation that everyone agrees on. Throughout history, people used to think ball lightning was some kind of supernatural occurrence. These days, we're trying to understand it scientifically, but it's tough to study something that shows up randomly and disappears in seconds. While it's generally not considered dangerous, there have been reports of it causing some property damage. It's one of those natural phenomena that really captures the imagination. Scientists are still working on cracking its secrets, and it's inspired all sorts of stories and debates. Pretty cool, right?
You know, déjà vu is one of those weird brain things that's really fascinating when you get into it. It's that freaky feeling where you swear you've lived through a moment before, even though you know logically that's impossible. The term itself is French for already seen, which is pretty spot on. What's wild is how common it is. Studies show something like 60 to 70% of people experience it at least once. It's usually super brief. Just a few seconds where everything feels eerily familiar, and you get this sense of unreality, like you're in a dream or something. Scientists have been scratching their heads over this for years, trying to figure out what's going on in our brains. One theory is that it's a memory mismatch. Basically, your brain might be taking the current situation and incorrectly linking it to a past memory. It's like your brain's filing system has a hiccup. Then there's this other idea that it might be related to how our brain processes information. Some researchers think there might be a tiny delay in how different parts of our brain communicate. So maybe the information is getting to one part of your brain twice, making it seem like you're experiencing something for the second time. There's also a connection to the temporal lobe in our brains. Some scientists think déjà vu might be linked to tiny, almost unnoticeable seizures in this part of the brain. It's the area that deals with memory and recognition, so it makes sense that a little misfire there could cause this weird familiar feeling. Interestingly, déjà vu seems to happen more to younger adults and less as we get older. No one's totally sure why, but it could be related to how our brains change as we age. Some studies have also found links between déjà vu and stress or fatigue, so if you're exhausted or stressed out, you might be more likely to experience it. One of the trickiest things about studying déjà vu is that it's so spontaneous. You can't really make it happen in a lab, which makes it tough for scientists to study. They've tried some creative experiments, like using virtual reality to create déjà vu-like experiences, but it's not quite the same as the real thing. It's important to note that while some people think déjà vu is some kind of psychic experience or a glimpse into past lives, there's no scientific evidence for that. It's more likely just an interesting quirk of how our brains process information and memories. There's still a lot we don't understand about déjà vu, and neuroscientists and psychologists are continuing to study it. Who knows, maybe one day we'll fully understand this weird little brain hiccup. Until then, it remains one of those mysterious and kind of cool things our minds do. You know, déjà vu is one of those weird brain things that's really fascinating when you get into it. You know, déjà vu is one of those weird brain things that's really fascinating when you get into it. Crop circles are these fascinating patterns that show up in fields, usually where cereal crops like wheat, barley, or corn are grown. They've been seen all over the world, but the UK is where they really started getting attention, especially in the late 20th century. The whole thing actually dates back a long way. There's even a mention of something like a crop circle from the 17th century in England in a pamphlet called The Mowing Devil, but the crop circles we think of today started appearing in the 1970s, mostly in the English countryside around Wiltshire. It wasn't until the 1980s and 1990s that crop circles really became a big deal. People started noticing these complex patterns that seemed to appear overnight, and it sparked all kinds of theories. Some folks were convinced that these circles were a sign of paranormal activity, or even messages from aliens. The designs were often so intricate and precise that it seemed hard to believe they were made by people. Then, in 1991, two guys from England, Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley, came forward and said they were responsible for a lot of these crop circles. They even showed how they used simple tools like ropes and planks to create them, but even after they admitted it, crop circles kept showing up, and some people argued that not all of them could be explained away as human-made. When you look at crop circles, there can be anything from simple circles to really complex geometric patterns that involve math, fractals, and even symbols. Most of the time, these formations appear overnight, which adds to the mystery. People wonder how they can be made so quickly and without anyone noticing. Although hoaxers usually use basic tools, some crop circles have characteristics that are hard to replicate, like perfectly bent stalks or crops that aren't disturbed around the edges. Scientists and skeptics tend to think that crop circles are mostly made by people, either as pranks or as a form of art. There have been some attempts to explain them with natural phenomena like wind patterns or electromagnetic forces, but these ideas haven't really caught on. On the other hand, there are still plenty of people who believe that crop circles have a supernatural or extraterrestrial origin. They point to the precision and complexity of some designs, arguing that they couldn't possibly be made by humans. Crop circles have really made their mark on popular culture. They've inspired books, documentaries, and movies. Remember the 2002 film Signs by M. Night Shyamalan? They're also a big topic in conspiracy theories and New Age beliefs. In some places, especially in the UK, crop circles have even become a tourist attraction. People come from all over to see them, and some artists have embraced the idea of creating these patterns as a form of land art. Even though most people now think crop circles are just the work of clever artists or pranksters, they still captivate our imagination. The mix of mystery, creativity, and the possibility of something unexplained keeps people intrigued, and that's why crop circles continue to be such a fascinating subject to this day. The Tunguska event is one of those crazy and mysterious things that happened in history. Imagine this: on June 30th, 1908, in a really remote part of Siberia, Russia, near the Podkamennaya Tunguska River, there was this massive explosion. It was so powerful that it flattened around 80 million trees over an area of about 830 square miles. The explosion was equivalent to 10 to 15 megatons of TNT, which is about 1,000 times more powerful than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Can you believe that? Now, What's even crazier is that no one really knows for sure what caused it. The most accepted theory is that a meteoroid or maybe a comet entered Earth's atmosphere, but it didn't just crash down. Instead, it exploded in the air like 3 to 6 miles above the ground. This kind of explosion, called an airburst, would explain why there was no impact crater found, but the shockwave from the explosion was still strong enough to flatten trees for miles around. There are, of course, some other theories, but they're pretty out there. Some people have suggested that it could have been a volcanic gas explosion, or even something like antimatter or aliens. But honestly, those ideas don't have much scientific backing. The aftermath of the explosion was felt far beyond Siberia. Shockwaves were recorded all over the world, and in the days after, people as far away as Europe and Asia reported strange things like glowing skies and bright nights, likely due to dust and particles in the atmosphere from the explosion. Despite how huge this event was, it wasn't really investigated until almost 20 years later in 1927, when a Russian scientist named Leonid Kulik led an expedition to the site. They were shocked by the sheer destruction, but didn't find any meteorite fragments or a crater, which just added to the mystery. Since then, a lot of studies have been done, and while we have some answers, the Tunguska event still leaves a lot of questions. It's a stark reminder of how powerful and unpredictable cosmic events can be. This event has actually led to more efforts to track asteroids and comets that could come close to Earth to prevent something like this from happening again. It's wild to think about, right? The Tunguska event is like this mix of science and mystery that's captured people's imaginations for over a century. Even though we have a pretty good idea of what happened, it's still one of those events that makes you realize how small we are compared to the forces out there in the universe. Have you ever heard about the dancing plague of 1518? It's one of the strangest things that ever happened in history, and it all went down in Strasbourg, which is now in France but was part of the Holy Roman Empire back then. So, picture this, in July 1518, this woman named Frau Troffea just starts dancing in the street, completely out of the blue. She kept going for days, like literally non-stop. Pretty soon, more and more people started joining her, and before you knew it, there were hundreds of people dancing like they couldn't stop. These people weren't just having fun, they were dancing uncontrollably. They didn't eat, drink or rest, and they kept going until they physically couldn't anymore. Some even collapsed and died from sheer exhaustion, heart attacks or strokes. It was like something out of a horror movie. No one really knows what caused it, but there are a few theories. Some people think it was mass hysteria, a kind of collective freak-out triggered by all the stress people were under at the time. There were famines, diseases, and religious fears hanging over everyone, so it makes sense that people's minds might crack under the pressure. Another theory is that it was caused by ergot poisoning. That's when a fungus grows on rye bread, and it can cause hallucinations and spasms because it has chemicals similar to LSD. So maybe they weren't just dancing, they were tripping. Then there's the idea that this was tied to religious beliefs. Back then, people believed in saints having power over certain things, and Saint Vitus was the guy linked to dancing and epilepsy. They thought maybe these people were cursed by him, and dancing was a way to get rid of the curse. At first, the local authorities were completely clueless and actually encouraged more dancing, thinking it would help people get it out of their system. They even hired musicians to keep the dance going, but when things got worse, they finally realized that wasn't working and banned dancing altogether. They ended up sending the dancers to a shrine dedicated to Saint Vitus, hoping some prayers would do the trick. Eventually, the whole thing died down after a few weeks, but it left people pretty shaken. Even now, it's still a mystery that fascinates historians and scientists. Can you imagine something like that happening today? It's just wild to think about. The disappearance of Malaysia Airlines Flight 370 is one of the most mysterious events in aviation history, and it still baffles people today. The flight, a Boeing 777, took off from Kuala Lumpur on March 8, 2014, heading for Beijing with 239 people on board. Everything seemed normal until about an hour after takeoff, when the plane suddenly went off radar and communication was lost. The last thing anyone heard from the cockpit was the co-pilot saying, "Good night, Malaysian 370, as they were supposed to switch over to air traffic control in Vietnam. After the plane's transponder was turned off, which is what helps it be seen on radar, the aircraft made a sharp turn west, flying back across Malaysia and out towards the Indian Ocean. Military radar picked this up, but after a while it disappeared completely, and no one knew where it went. This started one of the largest and most challenging search efforts ever. Initially, the search was in the South China Sea, but then satellite data pointed to the Indian Ocean. It seems like the plane kept flying for hours after contact was lost, likely heading south until it ran out of fuel and crashed somewhere in the vast ocean. Despite all the searching, including underwater exploration in the Indian Ocean, nothing was found in the primary search area. However, starting in 2015, pieces of debris, like a part of the wing called a flaperon, started washing up on shores around the western Indian Ocean. These were confirmed to be from MH370, but they didn't provide many clues about what really happened. There are a bunch of theories about what might have caused the plane to go off course and vanish. Some think it was a hijacking or that the pilot might have deliberately crashed the plane, but there's no solid evidence for these ideas. Others suggest that there was a mechanical failure or a fire on board, which might have caused the crew to try to turn back, but they became incapacitated before they could get help. The official investigations didn't come to a definite conclusion either. They said it was likely that the plane's change in course was deliberate, but they couldn't say who was responsible or why it happened. The search was officially called off in 2017 after nearly 3 years, but a private company did another search in 2018 without finding anything either. So, despite all the efforts, we still don't really know what happened to MH370. This whole incident led to some changes in aviation safety rules, like making it mandatory for planes to report their positions more often. But even with these changes, the mystery of what exactly happened to Flight 370 remains unsolved, and it continues to capture people's imagination. There are documentaries, books, and endless speculation, but without the wreckage or a clear answer, it's still one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in the skies. The Hanging Gardens of Babylon are one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, yet they remain shrouded in mystery. Unlike other wonders such as the Great Pyramid of Giza or the Lighthouse of Alexandria, no definitive archaeological evidence has been found to confirm their existence. This has led to ongoing debate among historians and scholars about whether the gardens were real or merely a mythological creation. Despite the lack of physical evidence, the gardens are described in several ancient texts as an extraordinary feat of engineering and botany attributed to the ancient city of Babylon, which was located in present-day Iraq. The most detailed descriptions of the Hanging Gardens come from Greek historians like Strabo and Philo of Byzantium. They depicted the gardens as a series of tiered terraces overflowing with lush trees, shrubs, and vines, creating the illusion of a verdant mountain rising out of the desert. The gardens were said to have been built by King Nebuchadnezzar II, who ruled Babylon around 605 to 562 BCE, for his wife Ametes of Media, who longed for the green hills of her homeland. However, no Babylonian texts mention the gardens, and Nebuchadnezzar's extensive inscriptions, which detail many of his construction projects, make no reference to such a structure. The precise location of the gardens has never been identified, and some scholars suggest that they might not have been in Babylon at all. In the late 19th century, German archaeologist Robert Coldewey uncovered large walls and foundations at Babylon that he speculated might have supported the gardens, but these findings remain contentious. More recently, some researchers, such as Stephanie Daly, have proposed that the gardens were actually located in Nineveh, the capital of the Assyrian Empire, and built by the Assyrian king Sennacherib. According to this theory, later historians mistakenly attributed the gardens to Babylon. If the Hanging Gardens did exist, they would have been a marvel of ancient engineering. The descriptions imply the use of advanced irrigation techniques to sustain a wide variety of plants in an arid environment, possibly involving a complex system of pumps or a chain of buckets to draw water from the nearby Euphrates River. The gardens were supposedly constructed on massive stone terraces, an unusual choice of material in Mesopotamia, where brick was more commonly used. This would have required significant architectural innovation and resources. Despite the ongoing debate over their existence, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon have left a lasting impact on culture and imagination. They are often depicted as a symbol of the grandeur and mystery of the ancient world, inspiring countless works of art, literature, and speculation. Whether they were a real place or a creation of myth, the Hanging Gardens continue to capture the fascination of people around the world, standing as a testament to the enduring allure of ancient history. These lights have intrigued locals and scientists alike, with sightings dating back to the 1930s. The lights often appear as glowing orbs or flashes of white, yellow, or red, varying in size from small points to larger balls of light. They may hover in the air, move rapidly across the sky, or even disappear and reappear elsewhere. These lights can last anywhere from a few seconds to over an hour, and are sometimes seen at different altitudes, close to the ground or higher up. Since the 1980s, the Hestalen lights have been the subject of scientific investigations. One of the most notable efforts to study the phenomenon began with Project Hestalen in 1983, where researchers set up measurement equipment in the valley. They recorded electromagnetic radiation and unusual radar echoes associated with the lights. In 1998, the Hestalen Automatic Measurement Station was established to continuously monitor and collect data on the lights, using video and other sensors to help analyze their characteristics. Several theories have been proposed to explain the Hestalen lights, though none are conclusive. One prominent theory is that the lights are caused by plasma, a form of ionized gas created by electromagnetic fields in the valley. Some scientists believe that local geological factors, such as underground minerals or metallic ores, could be generating these electric fields. Another theory suggests that seismic activity in the area might be causing the piezoelectric effect, in which quartz-rich rocks produce electrical charges, leading to the formation of the lights. Others speculate that the lights could be a unique atmospheric phenomenon, possibly related to ball lightning or air ionization. On the fringes, UFO enthusiasts have suggested that the lights may be linked to extraterrestrial activity, though no solid evidence supports this claim. Observations of the lights tend to peak during the winter months, particularly between 9 p.m. and 1 a.m. While the frequency of sightings has decreased in recent decades, the lights continue to appear sporadically, keeping the mystery alive. The phenomenon has captured the imagination of the public and the scientific community alike, drawing tourists, researchers, and media attention to the region. Despite ongoing research, the true nature of the Hestalen lights remains unknown, and the mystery surrounding them only adds to their allure. Amelia Earhart's disappearance is one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in aviation history. She vanished on July 2, 1937, while attempting to circumnavigate the globe in her Lockheed Model 10E Electra aircraft. Earhart was accompanied by her navigator, Fred Noonan, on one of the most challenging legs of the journey, flying from Lee, New Guinea, to Howland Island, a small and remote landmass in the Pacific Ocean. The flight was crucial for completing their mission, but it proved to be tragically fateful. During the final leg of the journey, radio contact with Earhart became increasingly sporadic. Her last confirmed transmission indicated she was low on fuel and struggling to locate Howland Island. Despite multiple attempts to communicate with the US Coast Guard cutter Itasca, which was stationed near Howland to assist with guidance, she never established a solid connection. Shortly afterward, all contact was lost. The exact location of her plane at the time remains unknown to this day. The US government quickly launched a massive search effort involving ships, planes, and volunteers, but no trace of Earhart, Noonan, or the plane was found. Over time, several theories emerged about what happened. The most widely accepted theory suggests that Earhart's plane simply ran out of fuel, and she crashed into the Pacific Ocean near Howland Island. Despite this being the dominant belief, no wreckage has ever been definitively found in that area. Other theories offer different possibilities. One suggests that Earhart and Noonan might have landed on Gardner Island, part of the Phoenix Islands, about 350 miles southeast of Howland. Artifacts discovered on the island over the years have led some to speculate that they may have survived there for a time before perishing. Another theory posits that Earhart's plane may have flown far off course and ended up in the Marshall Islands, where they were captured by the Japanese. Some even propose that Earhart was on a secret spy mission for the US government to gather intelligence on Japanese operations, although this theory is largely speculative. Over the decades, Amelia Earhart's disappearance has continued to captivate historians, researchers, and the public alike. Numerous expeditions have been launched, from deep-sea searches to further exploration of Gardner Island, in hopes of finding definitive evidence. Despite these efforts, no concrete conclusions have been reached, and her disappearance remains one of the most enduring mysteries of the 20th century. The fate of the lost colony of Roanoke is one of the most enduring mysteries in American history. In 1587, an expedition of 115 English settlers, led by Governor John White, established a colony on Roanoke Island, which is located off the coast of present-day North Carolina. This settlement was intended to be England's first permanent colony in the New World. However, shortly after its founding, White returned to England to gather more supplies. His return was delayed for 3 years due to the Anglo-Spanish War and other unforeseen circumstances. When White finally returned to Roanoke in 1590, he found the colony completely abandoned. The houses were dismantled, and there were no signs of a struggle or violence, but all the settlers had vanished. The only clue left behind was the word Croatoan carved into a post and the letters Crow etched into a nearby tree. Croatoan was the name of a nearby island now known as Hatteras Island, and also referred to a Native American tribe that lived in the region. Despite extensive searches, there was no trace of the colonists, including White's daughter and granddaughter, Virginia Dare, who was the first English child born in the Americas. Over the centuries, numerous theories have been proposed to explain the disappearance of the Roanoke settlers. One of the most widely accepted theories suggests that the colonists, facing dire conditions, sought refuge with nearby Native American tribes, possibly integrating with the Croatoan people. This theory is supported by oral histories from some Native American groups and the discovery of English artifacts on Hatteras Island. Another possibility is that the colonists were killed by hostile native tribes or Spanish forces, though no definitive evidence has been found to support this idea. Other theories suggest that the settlers relocated to another area, such as the Chesapeake Bay region, in an attempt to survive, or that they succumbed to starvation, disease, or environmental hardships. Despite archaeological efforts that have uncovered intriguing clues, including English artifacts in the Chesapeake area and on Hatteras Island, a conclusive answer to the mystery of what happened to the lost colony remains elusive. The Roanoke disappearance continues to captivate historians, archaeologists, and enthusiasts, leaving the fate of the settlers shrouded in mystery.
Dark matter is an invisible form of matter that doesn't emit, absorb, or reflect light, making it impossible to observe directly. Its existence is inferred through its gravitational effects on visible objects. For instance, when scientists study the way galaxies rotate, they observe that the outer stars in galaxies move much faster than they should based on the amount of visible matter alone. This suggests that there's an unseen mass providing additional gravitational pull, which we now call dark matter. Similarly, dark matter can bend light from distant objects, a phenomenon known as gravitational lensing, further proving its existence. While the exact nature of dark matter is unknown, scientists propose that it could consist of theoretical particles such as WIMPs, or weakly interacting massive particles, or axions. Dark matter plays a crucial role in the structure of the universe, accounting for about 27% of it, and acting as the scaffolding that holds galaxies and galaxy clusters together. Dark energy, on the other hand, is even more mysterious. It's a form of energy that makes up about 68% of the universe, and is responsible for its accelerated expansion. In the 1990s, astronomers studying distant supernovae made the surprising discovery that the universe's expansion wasn't slowing down as expected, but instead speeding up. This observation led to the hypothesis of dark energy, a force that opposes gravity and pushes space apart. The cosmic microwave background, the afterglow of the Big Bang, also shows evidence of dark energy, helping explain the overall flat geometry of the universe. While the exact nature of dark energy is unclear, one popular theory is the cosmological constant, which represents a constant energy density filling space. Other possibilities include quintessence, a dynamic field that changes over time, or more radical ideas involving modifications to our understanding of gravity. Dark matter and dark energy are fundamentally different. Dark matter exerts a gravitational pull, helping form galaxies and cosmic structures, while dark energy has the opposite effect, driving the accelerated expansion of space. Combined, these two components make up 95% of the universe, with dark energy being the dominant force. The interplay between dark matter, dark energy, and regular matter shapes the evolution and eventual fate of the cosmos, potentially leading to scenarios like a big rip or heat death as the universe continues to expand. Current research into both dark matter and dark energy includes efforts such as experiments at the Large Hadron Collider, where scientists are trying to detect potential dark matter particles, and new space missions like the Euclid spacecraft and the James Webb Space Telescope, which aim to observe the effects of dark energy on cosmic expansion. Direct detection experiments such as Xenon 1T and Lux Zeppelin are also attempting to capture evidence of dark matter particles on Earth. Despite these efforts, dark matter and dark energy remain two of the greatest mysteries in modern physics, and unlocking their secrets is essential for understanding the true nature of the universe. The construction of the ancient Egyptian pyramids, particularly the Great Pyramids of Giza, remains one of history's most remarkable engineering feats. Despite ongoing debate about the exact methods used, many scholars agree on certain key techniques and principles that likely played a role in their construction. Central to the process was the Egyptians' knowledge of geometry, astronomy, and architecture, which enabled them to design these massive structures with precision and stability. The construction required not only sophisticated engineering, but also a vast coordinated workforce, including skilled laborers, engineers, and craftsmen. One widely accepted theory is that the Egyptians used large limestone and granite blocks to build the pyramids, many of which weighed several tons. These blocks were quarried locally or brought from distant sites, such as Aswan, using the Nile River for transportation. To move these massive stones, it is believed that workers used sledges and ramps. Some evidence suggests that the Egyptians may have wetted the sand in front of the sledges to reduce friction, making it easier to pull the stones across the desert. A series of ramps, either straight, zigzagging, or spiraled around the structure, might have been used to lift the blocks into place as the pyramid grew taller. These ramps could have been made from mud brick, limestone chippings, or gypsum. Precision was critical to the construction of the pyramids. The Egyptians had a deep understanding of alignment and leveling, which allowed them to orient the pyramids almost perfectly to the cardinal points of the compass. They likely used tools like plumb bobs, levels, and sighting instruments to ensure the correct angles and smooth surfaces. For instance, the sides of the Great Pyramid of Giza are aligned to within a fraction of a degree of true north. This alignment, along with the precise stacking of millions of blocks, suggests an extraordinary degree of planning and knowledge. The workforce responsible for pyramid construction was highly organized, with evidence suggesting that laborers were divided into specialized teams. Contrary to earlier beliefs that the pyramids were built by slaves, modern archaeological discoveries indicate that the workers were skilled laborers who were well fed and provided with accommodations. Recent excavations have uncovered workers' villages near the pyramid sites, showing evidence of a well-maintained workforce, including medical care and provisions for daily needs. In addition to ramps and tools, the Egyptians employed innovative construction techniques to ensure the stability and longevity of the pyramids. Inside the pyramids, they built intricate networks of chambers and passageways. To relieve the pressure from the massive weight above, they used corbelled ceilings and stacked layers of stone beams to distribute the load away from the inner chambers, such as the burial chambers. The use of large, carefully placed granite blocks within the interior also helped protect the inner structures from collapse. While many details about the construction methods remain speculative, the combination of advanced geometry, skilled labor, and a highly organized workforce allowed the Egyptians to build the pyramids with remarkable precision and durability. These monumental structures, which have stood for over 4,500 years, continue to fascinate and inspire awe for their architectural sophistication and the ingenuity of ancient Egyptian engineering. The Oak Island Money Pit is one of the most enduring mysteries in the world of treasure hunting, drawing curiosity and speculation for over 2 centuries. Located on Oak Island, off the coast of Nova Scotia, Canada, the Money Pit is believed to be the site of a hidden treasure, possibly buried by pirates, the Knights Templar, or other secretive groups. The legend began in 1795, when a teenager named Daniel McGuinness, along with 2 friends, discovered a circular depression in the ground on the island. Believing it could be a treasure site, they began digging and found a layer of flagstones and evidence of wooden platforms every 10 feet, fueling rumors that a great treasure lay buried deep below. As more explorers joined the search, the dig site became increasingly elaborate, but it also revealed a series of baffling engineering challenges. One of the most frustrating aspects of the Money Pit is that it appears to be booby-trapped. After digging to a depth of about 90 feet, treasure hunters encountered a flood tunnel system that seemingly allowed seawater to fill the pit, preventing further excavation. Despite numerous attempts to block or divert the water, the pit continued to flood, stymieing efforts to reach the supposed treasure. This has led to theories that the pit was designed as an elaborate trap to keep intruders away from whatever lies at its bottom. Over the years, many treasure hunters, companies, and even famous figures have tried their luck at uncovering the secrets of the Oak Island Money Pit. In the mid-19th century, the Onslow Company launched one of the most serious efforts to reach the bottom of the pit, but like others before them, they were thwarted by the flooding. In 1861, another team reached what they believed was a vault, only for the pit to flood again. Efforts to pump out the water or drill into the pit were similarly unsuccessful, though some reported finding tantalizing clues, such as fragments of chain, metal pieces, and even parchment with strange markings. However, no definitive treasure has ever been uncovered. Over time, the legend of Oak Island has grown, with various theories emerging about what might be buried there. Some believe it could be pirate treasure, possibly left by Captain Kidd or Blackbeard. Others suggest that the pit might contain the lost jewels of Marie Antoinette, valuable religious artifacts, or even documents from the fabled Knights Templar. Some researchers have even proposed the idea that the pit contains Shakespearean manuscripts or other historical documents of immense value. These speculations, combined with the complex nature of the site, have kept interest in Oak Island alive for generations. In recent years, the search for the Oak Island treasure has gained new life, thanks in part to modern technology and a popular television show, The Curse of Oak Island, which has chronicled the ongoing exploration efforts. Treasure hunters have used advanced techniques, such as sonar ground-penetrating radar and more sophisticated excavation methods, to explore the Money Pit and other areas of the island. Despite these modern advancements, no conclusive treasure has been found, though the discovery of old coins, tools, and other artifacts continues to fuel hopes that the island's ultimate secret is yet to be revealed. The Oak Island Money Pit remains a mystery, with more questions than answers. Whether the pit contains a vast treasure or is simply a product of natural formations and human ingenuity, its allure persists. What keeps the legend alive is the tantalizing possibility that somewhere beneath the surface of Oak Island lies a great historical or monetary prize, waiting to be discovered. Until the mystery is solved, the Money Pit will continue to captivate treasure hunters and enthusiasts from around the world. The Mothman is a mysterious creature reported to have been sighted in the 1960s in the small town of Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and has since become one of the most famous figures in American folklore. Described as a large winged humanoid with glowing red eyes, the Mothman allegedly appeared multiple times in the area between November 1966 and December 1967. The first recorded sighting occurred on November 15, 1966, when 2 young couples were driving near an abandoned munitions plant known as the TNT area on the outskirts of Point Pleasant. They reported seeing a creature with a wingspan of 10 feet flying alongside their car at high speeds. The witnesses were so disturbed by the experience that they went to the local police, and their story made the news, sparking a wave of curiosity and fear. Over the next year, more than 100 people reported similar encounters with the Mothman. The creature was usually described as being between 6 and 7 feet tall, with large wings and hypnotic glowing red eyes. Witnesses claimed that it could fly at incredible speeds and was sometimes accompanied by a high-pitched screech. Many of the sightings took place in the TNT area, a former World War II weapons facility that had fallen into disrepair. The eerie, isolated landscape seemed to lend itself to these strange encounters. Some reports also described unexplained electrical malfunctions and strange, unsettling feelings experienced in the creature's presence. The Mothman sightings took on a more ominous tone in December 1967, when the Silver Bridge, which connected Point Pleasant to Ohio, suddenly collapsed, killing 46 people. The tragedy shocked the community, and in the aftermath, many locals began to associate the Mothman with the disaster, viewing the creature as a harbinger of doom or a warning of the impending catastrophe. Some witnesses claimed to have seen the Mothman near the bridge just before it collapsed, further cementing the creature's reputation as a supernatural being tied to tragic events. Following the Silver Bridge collapse, the Mothman sightings largely ceased, but the legend continued to grow. In the years since, various theories have emerged to explain the Mothman phenomenon. Some believe the creature was a previously unknown species of animal, possibly a large bird or bat, whose unusual appearance triggered exaggerated reports. Others suggest it may have been an alien or an interdimensional being, citing UFO sightings and other strange occurrences in the area around the same time. Still, others believe the Mothman is connected to ancient folklore, pointing to stories of similar winged creatures from Native American legends and other cultures around the world. One of the most influential accounts of the Mothman story came in 1975, when author John Keel published The Mothman Prophecies, a book that linked the sightings to broader paranormal phenomena, including UFOs and government conspiracies. Keel's work suggested that the Mothman might be part of a larger pattern of unexplained events, including sightings of strange lights, men in black, and psychic experiences in Point Pleasant. His book was later adapted into a 2002 film of the same name, which helped bring the Mothman legend to an even wider audience. Today, the Mothman is a beloved figure in Point Pleasant, where the town has embraced its paranormal history. Each year, the town hosts the Mothman Festival, attracting thousands of visitors who come to celebrate the creature with music, talks, and other events. A Mothman museum has also been established, and a large metallic statue of the creature stands in the center of town, serving as a popular tourist attraction. Over the years, sporadic Mothman sightings have been reported in other parts of the world, most notably in Chernobyl, before the nuclear disaster in 1986, and in Chicago in recent years. These reports suggest that the legend of the Mothman is far from over, as people continue to connect the creature to ominous, unexplained events. Whether it's a cryptid, a paranormal entity, or a psychological phenomenon, the Mothman remains one of the most intriguing and enduring mysteries of modern folklore. The Nazca Lines are a collection of enormous geoglyphs etched into the desert plains of southern Peru, and their origins have fascinated researchers for decades. Created by the Nazca civilization between 500 BCE and 500 CE, these lines consist of hundreds of individual figures, including geometric shapes, straight lines, spirals, and intricate depictions of animals such as birds, monkeys, fish, and even humanoid figures. These massive drawings span miles across the arid landscape and are best appreciated from the air, which adds to the mystery surrounding their creation. How could an ancient culture without aerial technology have designed and executed such precise, large-scale drawings? The Nazca civilization, which thrived in the region during this period, is believed to have developed sophisticated agricultural and engineering practices to survive in the harsh desert climate. Their society is known for its pottery and textiles, but the Nazca Lines stand as their most extraordinary achievement. The lines were created by removing the reddish-brown iron oxide-coated stones that cover the desert surface, exposing the lighter-colored earth beneath. The dry, windless climate of the Nazca Desert has preserved these designs for over 1,500 years, keeping them remarkably intact. The purpose behind the creation of the Nazca Lines has been the subject of much speculation and research. Early theories, particularly in the 1940s and 50s, suggested that the lines might have served as astronomical markers or calendars. Paul Kozok, an American historian, was among the first to propose that the lines had an astronomical function, noting that some of the lines aligned with the positions of the sun during the solstices. His research was expanded by Maria Reicher, a German archaeologist who dedicated her life to studying the lines. She also supported the idea that the geoglyphs had astronomical significance, believing that the Nazca people used the lines to mark celestial events, such as the movement of the stars and planets, which could have been linked to their agricultural cycles. However, not all scholars agree with the astronomical theory. Another prominent interpretation is that the Nazca Lines had a religious or ceremonial purpose. Some experts suggest that the lines were part of rituals related to water, fertility, and agriculture. The region in which the Nazca civilization lived is one of the driest places on Earth, and water would have been of utmost importance to their survival. According to this theory, the lines may have been a way for the Nazca people to communicate with their gods, particularly deities associated with rainfall and water sources. Some of the animal figures, such as birds and marine creatures, are thought to symbolize fertility or the life-sustaining power of water, while the geometric lines may have served as pathways for religious processions. More recent studies propose that the lines were not only religious, but also related to the Nazca people's shamanistic practices. Some researchers suggest that the geoglyphs may have been used as part of spiritual rituals involving hallucinogenic plants, which were known to be consumed by the Nazca. In these rituals, shamans may have perceived the world in different ways and seen the figures or patterns that were later reproduced on the desert floor. This would align with the elaborate and sometimes fantastical nature of the animal designs, which could represent the vision quests or supernatural experiences of the shamans. The fact that the lines are so large that they can only be fully seen from the air has led to more controversial theories as well. Some fringe theorists, most notably Erich von Daniken, have proposed that the Nazca Lines were created with the assistance of extraterrestrial beings or that they served as landing strips for alien spacecraft. However, these ideas are generally dismissed by the scientific community. Archaeological research in the region continues to uncover new information about the Nazca civilization and their environment. Recent studies using advanced technologies such as satellite imaging and drones have revealed new geoglyphs and helped scholars gain a better understanding of how the lines were made. Despite this, the true origin and meaning of the Nazca Lines remain one of the most captivating mysteries in archaeology, symbolizing the ingenuity and cultural depth of the ancient Nazca people, while inviting continued exploration and debate. The Amber Room is one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of World War II, often referred to as the eighth wonder of the world. Originally constructed in the early 18th century, the Amber Room was a magnificent chamber made almost entirely of amber, gold leaf and mirrors, located in the Catherine Palace near St. Petersburg, Russia. Its disappearance during the war remains one of the most famous cases of looted art, and despite extensive searches and investigations, the fate of the Amber Room is still unknown. The room was originally created in 1701 by German artisans for Frederick I of Prussia. Designed by sculptor Andreas Schluter and crafted by Gottfried Wolfram, it consisted of panels made from amber, fossilized tree resin, backed by gold and inlaid with precious stones. In 1716, Frederick's son Frederick William I gifted the Amber Room to Peter the Great of Russia, cementing an alliance between Prussia and Russia. Peter the Great, known for his love of Western art and culture, had the room installed in his palace. Over the next few decades, Russian artisans expanded and enhanced the room, integrating mirrors and mosaics until it became one of the most opulent interiors in Europe. For more than 2 centuries, the Amber Room stood as a symbol of Russian imperial luxury. However, during World War II, the room's fate took a dramatic turn. In June 1941, Nazi Germany launched Operation Barbarossa, invading the Soviet Union. By September 1941, the German army reached the outskirts of Leningrad, modern-day St. Petersburg, where the Amber Room was located. Knowing that the Nazis were systematically looting art treasures, Soviet curators attempted to protect the Amber Room by covering its panels with wallpaper in hopes of concealing it. However, their efforts were in vain. When German forces occupied the Catherine Palace in 1941, they dismantled the Amber Room in a matter of days and transported it to Königsberg Castle in East Prussia, now Kaliningrad, Russia. Once in Königsberg, the Amber Room was reassembled and displayed in the castle's museum. However, as the war began to turn against Germany and Allied forces advanced, the Nazis started evacuating or hiding valuable items. In January 1945, as Soviet troops approached Königsberg, the Amber Room was packed up for safekeeping. What happened next remains a mystery. When Soviet forces took Königsberg in April 1945, the Amber Room had vanished, and its whereabouts have remained unknown ever since. There are many theories about what happened to the Amber Room after 1945. One possibility is that it was destroyed during the Allied bombing of Königsberg. Some historians believe the room may have been hidden in a bunker beneath the castle, which was later bombed, resulting in the room's destruction by fire. However, no definitive evidence has been found to support this theory. Another theory suggests that the Nazis hid the Amber Room in a secret underground location, perhaps in one of the many tunnels and bunkers in Eastern Europe. Over the years, various expeditions have been launched to search for the room in locations such as Poland, Germany, and Russia, but none have uncovered its whereabouts. Occasionally, rumors surface that pieces of the Amber Room have been found. In 1997, a German art investigator claimed to have discovered a piece of the room's mosaic, which fueled speculation that parts of the room may still be in private collections. In 2003, another piece, a small chest of drawers that was part of the Amber Room's original furnishings, was found in Germany. However, these fragments have provided few concrete leads as to the location of the full room. The mystery of the Amber Room has inspired countless treasure hunters and conspiracy theorists. Some claim it was sunk in a ship off the coast of the Baltic Sea. Others suggest it was hidden in a mine. And more fantastical ideas include the possibility that it was smuggled to South America or remains hidden in a forgotten Nazi bunker. While none of these theories have been proven, the quest for the Amber Room continues to captivate historians, art lovers, and treasure seekers. In the absence of the original, a replica of the Amber Room was painstakingly constructed by Russian artisans and unveiled in 2003 at the Catherine Palace to celebrate the 300th anniversary of St. Petersburg. This reconstruction, based on historical photographs and descriptions, is a stunning, but the original remains an iconic symbol of lost cultural heritage. The disappearance of the Amber Room stands as one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of World War II, emblematic of the massive scale of art theft during the war and the ongoing quest to recover lost treasures. The Green Children of Woolpit is a curious medieval legend that has fascinated historians and folklorists for centuries. The story centers around two mysterious children, a boy and a girl, who were discovered near the village of Woolpit in Suffolk, England during the 12th century. The children were peculiar not only because of their appearance, but also due to the strange, otherworldly circumstances surrounding their arrival. According to the legend, the two children had green-tinted skin, wore unfamiliar clothing, and spoke an unknown language. The tale begins when villagers found the children near a wolf pit, from which Woolpit gets its name, an ancient trap used to catch wolves. They were frightened and disoriented, and their greenish skin immediately caught the attention of the local people. The children were taken to the home of Sir Richard de Calne, a local nobleman, where they were cared for. However, the children refused to eat the food provided to them, appearing confused by the sight of bread and other common fare. After several days, they began to eat raw beans, which were likely the only familiar food to them. Over time, the children gradually adapted to their new surroundings. They learned to eat other types of food, and as they did, their skin lost its green hue and returned to a normal complexion. The boy, however, became sick and died shortly after arriving in the village. The girl survived and eventually learned to speak English. When asked about their origins, the girl gave a bizarre and cryptic account. She claimed that they came from a land called St. Martin's Land, a place of eternal twilight where the sun never fully rose, and everything was bathed in a greenish glow. She described their homeland as being separated from this world by a great river and a luminous land of light. The children had been tending their father's cattle when they heard a strange sound and suddenly found themselves in the wolf pit in Woolpit, disoriented and unable to explain how they arrived there. The story of the Green Children of Woolpit has been recorded in two primary sources from the 12th century, William of Newburgh's Historia Rerum Anglicarum and Ralph of Coggeshall's Chronicon Anglicanum. Both chroniclers were reputable historians of their time, which adds a degree of credibility to the account. However, the fantastical nature of the story has led to much speculation and debate about its meaning and origins. While the story has elements of folklore, such as its association with strange, green-skinned beings, it also contains enough realistic details to have sparked serious discussion among scholars. Several theories have been proposed to explain the mystery of the Green Children. One theory suggests that the children were malnourished, which could account for their green skin, a condition known as chlorosis, or green sickness, which can occur due to a lack of iron in the diet. The children's reluctance to eat the villagers' food might have been due to unfamiliarity with English customs or foodstuffs. If they came from a remote part of England, they could have been refugees or orphans displaced by war or famine, particularly during the period of conflict between Normans and Saxons in the 12th century. Their strange clothing and language could have been regional variations unfamiliar to the local villagers. Another popular theory is that the story is an allegory for the experience of Flemish immigrants. During the time the tales supposedly took place, there were Flemish settlers in England, and some historians suggest that the Green Children may have been Flemish children who had fled persecution or violence. The description of St. Martin's Land, with its perpetual twilight and otherworldly qualities, might have been a distorted memory of their homeland, or a way of explaining their foreignness to the English-speaking villagers. Some have suggested more supernatural explanations, associating the children with folklore about fairies or otherworldly beings. In medieval folklore, green was often associated with nature spirits, fairies and magical beings, leading some to speculate that the children were not of this world at all. Their account of coming from a land with perpetual twilight could be seen as a reference to fairyland or some kind of parallel universe. The legend of the Green Children has thus been connected to a broader tradition of fairy lore in Britain, where mysterious or enchanted children often feature. Regardless of its true origins, the story of the Green Children of Woolpit has endured as one of England's most enigmatic legends. Over the centuries, it has inspired numerous interpretations in literature, history, and even science fiction. the combination of real historical elements with an air of fantasy has made it a captivating mystery, prompting questions about the nature of the children, their origins, and the cultural meaning behind the story. Whether seen as a metaphor for the strangeness of foreigners in a medieval village, or as a genuine supernatural encounter, the Green Children of Woolpit remain one of the most intriguing tales from English folklore. The Baghdad Battery is a mysterious ancient artifact that has sparked debate and speculation since its discovery in the 1930s. This artifact consists of a ceramic jar, a copper cylinder, and an iron rod, and it is believed to date back to the Parthian period, between 150 BCE and 223 CE, in what is now modern-day Iraq. Found near Baghdad, the artifact has been dubbed the Baghdad Battery, due to its uncanny resemblance to a primitive electrical battery. Its purpose, however, remains uncertain, and scholars have debated whether it truly functioned as a source of electricity or served some other more mundane function. The Baghdad Battery was discovered in 1936 by German archaeologist Wilhelm Koenig, who was conducting excavations in the area around Kujut Rabu, near Baghdad. Koenig later speculated that the artifact could have been an ancient galvanic cell capable of generating small amounts of electricity. The jar is roughly 6 inches tall and contains a copper cylinder made from a rolled sheet of copper. The copper cylinder is held in place by asphalt, and inside the cylinder is an iron rod also insulated with asphalt. When filled with an acidic liquid like vinegar or lemon juice, the jar could theoretically produce a small electrical charge, as the interaction between the copper, iron, and acid would create a weak electrochemical reaction. Koenig's theory gained widespread attention, particularly because it suggested that the ancients may have had knowledge of electricity long before its documented discovery. If the Baghdad Battery was indeed used to generate electricity, it would be an astonishing example of ancient technological advancement. Some theorists have proposed that the battery could have been used for electroplating, coating objects in a thin layer of metal, suggesting that the Parthians may have used electricity to gild small items or create other metallic finishes. Despite these intriguing possibilities, many experts are skeptical of the Baghdad Battery's use as an electrical device. Critics argue that there is no definitive evidence that the battery was used for electroplating or any other electrical purpose. They point out that the object may have had a different, non-electrical function entirely. Some scholars believe that the jar may have been used for storage, perhaps to hold sacred scrolls or religious artifacts. Others suggest that it could have been used for medical or therapeutic purposes, such as producing mild electric shocks for healing, though no direct evidence supports these claims. Another possibility is that the Baghdad Battery had a symbolic or ritualistic function rather than a practical one. The Parthians, like many ancient cultures, were skilled in metalworking and chemistry, and it's possible they created this device without fully understanding its potential for electricity. Some researchers believe that the artifact may have been used in religious ceremonies or as part of magical practices, where the mysterious energy generated by the battery would have been perceived as divine or supernatural. In the absence of more definitive evidence, the true purpose of the Baghdad Battery remains a mystery. Despite extensive studies and reconstructions, including experiments by modern scientists who have replicated the jar's design to generate small electrical currents, no one can say for certain how the original device was used, or even if it was intended to produce electricity at all. The Baghdad Battery continues to be a source of fascination, particularly for those interested in ancient technology and alternative histories. It has inspired a wide range of theories, some of which are far more speculative than others. Certain fringe theorists have suggested that the battery is evidence of lost or forgotten technologies, implying that ancient civilizations possessed far more advanced knowledge than we typically attribute to them. This has led to connections with broader ideas of ancient astronauts or high-tech prehistory, though such interpretations lack strong archaeological support. Overall, the Baghdad battery remains an enigmatic artifact, raising questions about the technological capabilities of ancient peoples and the limits of our understanding of their knowledge. Whether it was used as a battery, for religious rituals, or something else entirely, the Baghdad battery stands as a reminder of the complexity of ancient cultures and the intriguing mysteries that continue to surround them. The Max Headroom broadcast intrusion is one of the most notorious and mysterious cases of television signal hijacking in history. It occurred on November 22, 1987, in Chicago, Illinois, when an unidentified person managed to interrupt the broadcasts of two television stations, WGN-TV and WTTW, with a bizarre video featuring a person wearing a mask of the popular 1980s character, Max Headroom. The incident remains unsolved to this day, leaving behind a legend of one of the most surreal and unsettling moments in television history. The first intrusion took place during WGN-TV's 9 p.m. sportscast. While sports anchor Dan Roan was delivering highlights of a Chicago Bears game, the screen suddenly flickered and was replaced by a person wearing a Max Headroom mask, standing in front of a background mimicking the computer-generated graphics that were iconic to the character. The image lasted for about 30 seconds, with no sound, before WGN engineers were able to regain control of the signal. Roan appeared on camera visibly confused but continued with the broadcast, calling the interruption a little short in the signal. However, the hijacker wasn't finished. About 2 hours later, during a broadcast of the Doctor Who episode, Horror of Fang Rock on WTTW, the PBS affiliate in Chicago, the Max Headroom hacker struck again. This time, the hijacking lasted longer, about 90 seconds, and included both video and sound. The masked figure bobbed and swayed erratically while speaking in distorted, nonsensical phrases. The transmission was chaotic, with odd references to WGN, the sportscaster, and even Coke. Max Headroom was famously associated with Coca-Cola commercials. At one point, the person behind the mask pulled down their pants and was spanked with a fly swatter by someone off camera. This strange and unsettling broadcast came to an end when WTTW engineers regained control of the signal. The character Max Headroom was a popular fictional persona in the mid-1980s, created as a computer-generated artificial intelligence with a stuttering, glitchy personality. First introduced in 1985 on British television, Max Headroom later became a cultural icon in the United States, appearing in commercials for Coca-Cola and starring in his own short-lived TV series. The character's futuristic, dystopian look, combined with his trademark stuttering speech, made him a symbol of the emerging digital and media age. It was this striking imagery that the broadcast intruder used to create a visually unsettling experience. The fact that someone could hijack the airwaves of two major television stations raised serious concerns about the vulnerability of broadcast systems at the time. The FCC, the Federal Communications Commission, and the FBI both launched investigations into the incident, but despite their efforts, the identity of the hijacker was never discovered. The technical difficulty of such a feat suggested that the perpetrator had a sophisticated understanding of broadcasting technology. At the time, analog television signals could be intercepted by broadcasting a stronger signal over the same frequency, but it was not something easily accomplished without the right equipment and expertise. The motivation behind the Max Headroom broadcast intrusion has remained as mysterious as the identity of the hacker. The video was filled with cryptic, nonsensical references and contained no overt political message or agenda, which has led to various interpretations over the years. Some have speculated that it was simply a prank pulled off by someone who wanted to challenge the system, proving that even the most secure broadcasts could be disrupted. Others view the hijack as a form of anti-establishment art, reflecting the punk or hacker ethos of the 1980s, where subverting media and authority was seen as a form of rebellion. Despite the lack of any apparent message, the incident became a cultural touchstone. The eerie, distorted image of the masked figure, along with the bizarre content of the broadcast, has been the subject of countless discussions, documentaries, and online theories. The Max Headroom intrusion has taken on an almost mythic status in internet culture, referenced in everything from YouTube videos to episodes of popular TV shows like Mr. Robot, which explore themes of hacking and media manipulation. To this day, no one has been officially caught or charged for the hijacking, and it remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in the history of broadcasting. The anonymity of the perpetrator, coupled with the strange and unsettling nature of the broadcast itself, has ensured that the Max Headroom incident continues to captivate and intrigue. It serves as a reminder of the fragile nature of media systems, the potential for disruption, and the enduring mystery of who was behind one of the most bizarre moments in television history. The mystery of the Shroud of Turin has intrigued scientists, theologians, and historians for centuries. Central to the enigma is how the faint image of a crucified man was imprinted on the linen cloth. No definitive explanation has been established for the formation of this image. Some suggest that it was created by natural processes, while others propose it could be a supernatural occurrence linked to the resurrection of Jesus Christ. The image shows detailed markings of a man who was scourged, crowned with thorns, and crucified, which aligns with biblical accounts of Christ's suffering. This striking resemblance has fueled claims that the shroud is the actual burial cloth of Jesus. However, many questions remain unanswered about how an image of such complexity could appear without the use of pigments, dyes, or known artistic techniques. One of the most perplexing aspects of the shroud is the image's photographic negative quality, first discovered in 1898 by photographer Secondo Pia. When Pia developed the first photograph of the shroud, he found that the negative showed a much clearer and detailed figure than what is visible to the naked eye. This discovery added a new dimension to the mystery, suggesting that the image carries details that can only be revealed through modern technology. Despite this, no satisfactory explanation has been offered as to how a medieval forger could have achieved this effect, especially considering that photography did not exist at the time. The 1988 radiocarbon dating test, which suggested the shroud dates between 1260 and 1390, appeared to resolve the mystery by declaring it a medieval forgery. However, the results of this test have been heavily criticized and contested. Some researchers argue that the sample tested may have been taken from a portion of the cloth that was repaired in the Middle Ages, which would skew the dating results. Others point out the presence of possible contaminants like wax and smoke from candles, which could have affected the test. This has left room for further speculation, and no consensus has been reached. In addition to scientific debates, the shroud's image is mysterious in terms of how it could have been created. Various theories have been proposed, including the idea that a burst of energy, possibly radiation, during the resurrection could have imprinted the image on the cloth. Other researchers believe it may have been formed by natural chemical reactions between body oils, sweat, and the linen fibers. Yet none of these hypotheses have been proven conclusively. The mystery of the Shroud of Turin remains unsolved, continuing to inspire awe and debate among those who seek to understand its origin and meaning. The Loch Ness Monster, often referred to as Nessie, is a legendary creature said to inhabit Loch Ness, a large, deep freshwater lake in the Scottish Highlands. The mystery surrounding the Loch Ness Monster has captured the imagination of people worldwide for decades, with reports of sightings dating back centuries. The modern legend of Nessie, however, began in 1933, when a couple claimed to have seen a large, dragon-like creature crossing the road in front of their car near Loch Ness. This sighting garnered widespread media attention and sparked a flurry of subsequent reports and interest in the phenomenon. Since then, thousands of people have claimed to have seen the Loch Ness Monster. describing it as a large, serpentine or dinosaur-like creature, often with a long neck and humps protruding from the water. Some speculate that Nessie could be a prehistoric marine reptile such as a plesiosaur that somehow survived extinction. Others believe it might be a giant eel, a sturgeon, or even a misidentified natural phenomenon such as floating logs, waves, or optical illusions. Efforts to scientifically investigate the Loch Ness monster have been numerous and varied. In the 1930s and 1940s, expeditions used basic tools like binoculars and cameras to search for evidence. In the 1970s, more sophisticated sonar equipment was employed to scan the depths of Loch Ness, a lake known for its great depth and poor visibility. While some sonar contacts showed unexplained objects moving in the water, they were too vague to definitively prove the existence of a large creature. Various photographs and videos have emerged over the years, but many have been debunked as hoaxes, such as the famous surgeon's photograph from 1934, which was revealed to be a staged image involving a toy submarine. In more recent years, scientific investigations have taken a more skeptical approach. Studies using DNA sampling of Loch Ness's waters have found no evidence of any unknown large animal species living in the loch, though they did discover significant eel DNA, leading some researchers to suggest that large eels might account for some Nessie sightings. Additionally, sonar scans continue to show occasional unexplained blips, but none have provided conclusive evidence of a large creature. Despite the lack of scientific proof, the Loch Ness monster remains one of the world's most enduring cryptids, symbolizing the allure of the unknown and the possibility that mysterious creatures might still exist in the remote corners of the world. The legend has also become a major cultural and tourist attraction, drawing people from all over to Loch Ness in hopes of glimpsing the elusive creature. Whether Nessie is a real creature, a product of imagination, or a combination of misidentifications and hoaxes, the mystery continues to fascinate believers and skeptics alike. The Oumuamua interstellar object is one of the most enigmatic and intriguing discoveries in recent astronomical history. It was first detected on October 19, 2017, by astronomers using the Pan-STARRS 1 telescope in Hawaii. The object was notable for being the first observed interstellar object passing through our solar system, meaning it originated from outside. Unlike typical comets or asteroids that orbit the Sun, Oumuamua was observed traveling on a hyperbolic trajectory, indicating that it was just passing through and not bound to the Sun by gravity. Oumuamua's physical characteristics added to the mystery. Initial observations suggested it was highly elongated, like a cigar or pancake, with a length possibly 10 times its width, making it unlike any previously observed object. Additionally, Oumuamua exhibited non-gravitational acceleration, meaning its speed increased in a way that could not be explained solely by the gravitational pull of the Sun and planets. Normally, comets experience such accelerations when gases and dust are expelled from them, but Oumuamua showed no visible signs of a comet-like tail or gas emission, sparking intense speculation about its true nature.
Scientists and astronomers proposed various hypotheses to explain Oumuamua's behavior. Some suggested it might be a fragment of a larger body, a very unusual asteroid or comet, or even something more exotic like a thin, light sail propelled by radiation pressure from starlight. This latter idea, championed by Harvard astronomer Avi Loeb, drew widespread attention and sparked debates about whether Oumuamua could be an artificial object sent by an advanced civilization, though this remains a fringe theory within the scientific community.
Efforts to study Oumuamua were hindered by its brief visibility. By the time it was discovered, it was already moving away from Earth and the Sun, quickly becoming too faint to observe in detail.
As of now, the exact nature of Oumuamua remains unresolved. It has become a symbol of the vast unknowns in space exploration, highlighting how little we understand about the objects traveling between stars.
While some scientists lean toward natural explanations such as a hydrogen iceberg or a fragment of a distant planet, the mystery persists, making Oumuamua an enduring source of fascination and curiosity in the astronomical world. The death of Edgar Allan Poe, the famed American writer and poet, remains one of the most mysterious and debated episodes in literary history. On October 3, 1849, Poe was found wandering the streets of Baltimore in a state of delirium, wearing clothes that were not his own. He was discovered outside a public house, confused, disheveled, and unable to explain how he had come to be in such a condition. 4 days later, on October 7, 1849, Poe died in a hospital under circumstances that continue to puzzle historians and biographers. At the time of his death, Poe was only 40 years old and already a well-known figure in American literature, having authored works like The Raven and The Telltale Heart. His medical records and death certificate were lost, which has left historians to speculate about the cause of his death for more than a century. In his final moments, Poe reportedly called out the name Reynolds, a figure whose identity remains unknown, further deepening the mystery, but no concrete answer has emerged. Here are some of the possible figures linked to this name. Jeremiah N. Reynolds. A notable theory suggests that Poe may have been referring to Jeremiah N. Reynolds, an explorer and newspaper editor who was known for his advocacy of polar exploration. Poe had some knowledge of Reynolds' work, and it's believed that Reynolds might have influenced Poe's 1838 novel, The Narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket, which involves themes of exploration. If Poe had Jeremiah Reynolds in mind during his final delirious moments, it might have been a reference to a lingering fascination with exploration or his own unfinished literary pursuits. An unidentified acquaintance. Some scholars speculate that Reynolds might have been an acquaintance or someone from Poe's personal life, though no specific Reynolds or any other Reynolds matching that description has been definitively linked to Poe. This has led to the theory that the name could have simply been a figment of his delirium, reflecting his confused mental state rather than a real person. There are several theories regarding the cause of Poe's death. One popular explanation is that he may have died from alcohol poisoning. Poe was known to struggle with alcohol throughout his life, and it was believed that his condition could have worsened due to binge drinking. However, this theory is complicated by reports that Poe had been trying to abstain from alcohol in the period leading up to his death. Other theories propose that he died from a medical condition such as rabies, epilepsy, or tuberculosis, diseases that were prevalent at the time and could explain his erratic behavior and physical deterioration. One of the most intriguing theories is that Poe was a victim of cooping, a practice used by political gangs in the 19th century. During elections, gangs would kidnap individuals, force them to change clothes, and make them vote multiple times under different identities. Poe was found on Election Day in Baltimore, a city known for such practices, and his strange attire has fueled speculation that he might have been a victim of cooping, beaten and left in a state of disorientation. Despite the many theories, the true cause of Edgar Allan Poe's death remains unresolved. His passing, shrouded in mystery, has become as much a part of his legacy as his literary works, adding a macabre layer to the life of a writer whose stories often dealt with death, madness, and the uncanny. Poe's final days, marked by confusion and unanswered questions, mirror the eerie and unsettling themes he explored in his tales, ensuring that his death continues to fascinate both scholars and fans alike. Spontaneous human combustion, or SHC, is a term used to describe incidents in which a person is reported to have suddenly burst into flames without any obvious external source of ignition. What makes SHC particularly mysterious is that the affected individuals are often found with their bodies severely burned, sometimes reduced to ash, while surrounding objects, including clothing or furniture, remain relatively unscathed. This paradoxical scenario has intrigued scientists, investigators, and the public for centuries, with documented cases dating back to the 17th century. One of the most famous cases of SHC occurred in 1951, when 67-year-old Mary Reeser from Florida was found almost completely incinerated in her home, with only her lower leg remaining intact. Her case, along with others, led to widespread speculation and debate about the possible causes of SHC. Some of the theories put forward have ranged from esoteric explanations, such as the body generating an internal chemical reaction, to more scientific ones, like the wick effect. The wick effect suggests that human fat can act like the wax of a candle, with clothing or nearby objects acting as a wick, allowing the body to burn slowly over time. This theory explains why only the body burns while the surroundings remain largely unaffected. Despite these theories, SHC remains a mystery because of its rarity and the lack of definitive scientific evidence. Skeptics argue that many reported cases of SIC can be attributed to external sources of ignition, such as cigarettes, or that the victims were already incapacitated and unable to extinguish the flames. Others point to medical conditions, like ketosis, which can produce flammable chemicals in the body, as a possible explanation. Nonetheless, the mystery of SHC persists, fueled by a combination of scientific uncertainty, sensational media reports, and a fascination with the idea that the human body could combust from within. While modern science has yet to conclusively explain SHC, the phenomenon continues to captivate imaginations, maintaining its status as one of the more bizarre and chilling mysteries in the annals of unsolved phenomena. The Fermi Paradox refers to the apparent contradiction between the high probability of the existence of extraterrestrial civilizations in the vast universe and the lack of evidence for or contact with such civilizations. The paradox is named after physicist Enrico Fermi, who, during a casual conversation in 1950, asked,
"Where is everybody?"
This simple question encapsulated the puzzling disconnect between the likelihood of intelligent life beyond Earth and our failure to detect any signs of it. The paradox arises from several factors. First, the Milky Way galaxy alone contains between 100 to 400 billion stars, many of which have planets in the habitable zone, where conditions could support life.
Given that our own planet developed intelligent life relatively quickly in cosmic terms, it seems statistically likely that many other planets could have developed advanced civilizations.
In fact, the universe is over 13 billion years old, providing ample time for intelligent life to emerge and spread across galaxies.
If even a small fraction of civilizations are capable of developing interstellar travel, they should have colonized or at least left detectable signs across the galaxy by now.
Yet, despite the mathematical likelihood, humanity has found no definitive evidence of extraterrestrial civilizations. This absence of evidence, no signals, no probes, no artifacts, has led to a range of theories about why this might be the case.
Some suggest that intelligent civilizations are either rare or short-lived due to self-destruction. Like through nuclear war, climate change, or technological collapse.
Others propose that advanced civilizations may deliberately avoid us, adhering to some form of a galactic zoo hypothesis, where they observe less advanced civilizations like humanity without interfering.
Another idea is that technological limitations, such as the immense distances between stars or the energy required for interstellar travel, make communication or exploration prohibitively difficult. The Fermi Paradox continues to fuel debate in both the scientific community and popular culture.
It highlights how little we truly understand about the universe, the nature of life, and the long-term survival of civilizations.
As scientists develop more advanced methods to search for extraterrestrial life, such as studying exoplanets for biosignatures, listening for radio signals, or even exploring our own solar system for microbial life, the Fermi Paradox serves as a reminder of how much remains unknown about our place in the cosmos. The Gilgo Beach murders refer to a series of unsolved killings that came to light in late 2010 along Ocean Parkway on Long Island, New York.
The case began when police were searching for Shannon Gilbert, a missing sex worker, and instead discovered the remains of 4 other women.
As the investigation progressed, more bodies were found in the area, eventually totaling at least 10 victims. The majority of the identified victims were young women who worked as escorts or sex workers, advertising their services on websites like Craigslist.
The remains were found in various states of decomposition, with some dating back to the mid-1990s.
This suggested that the killer or killers had been active for an extended period.
The investigation revealed that most of the victims had been strangled and their bodies wrapped in burlap sacks before being dumped along the beach.
The method of disposal and the targeting of sex workers led investigators to believe that a serial killer, dubbed the Long Island Serial Killer or LISK, was responsible for at least some of the murders.
The case gained significant media attention and sparked discussions about the vulnerability of sex workers and the challenges in investigating crimes against them.
It also highlighted issues with police procedures, as it took years for some of the victims to be identified and for connections to be made between the various discoveries.
Despite extensive investigations, including the use of genetic genealogy and other advanced forensic techniques, the case remained unsolved for many years. However, in July 2023, authorities arrested Rex Heuermann, a 59-year-old architect from Massapequa Park, Long Island, in connection with 3 of the Gilgo Beach murders.
Heuermann was charged with the murders of Melissa Barthelemy, Megan Waterman, and Amber Lynn Costello, and was named as the prime suspect in the death of a 4th victim, Maureen Brainerd Barnes.
Investigators cited DNA evidence, cell phone records, and witness statements as key factors leading to his arrest.
However, questions remain about other victims found in the area, and whether all the murders can be attributed to a single perpetrator.
The Gilgo Beach murders case continues to be a topic of intense interest, spawning numerous books, documentaries, and podcasts. It serves as a reminder of the ongoing challenges in solving complex serial murder cases and the importance of continued attention to cold cases. The Babushka lady is one of the most enigmatic figures connected to the assassination of President John F. Kennedy on November 22, 1963. Her presence in Dealey Plaza, the site of the assassination, has sparked decades of speculation and debate. She was named the Babushka lady because she was wearing a headscarf similar to the traditional style worn by elderly Russian women, or babushkas. She stood out in the crowd not only for her distinctive attire, but also for her behavior during the shooting. In multiple photographs and film reels of the assassination, the Babushka lady is seen standing on the south side of Elm Street, across from the Texas School Book Depository, a crucial location since it was from this building's 6th floor that Lee Harvey Oswald is said to have fired the shots. She appears to be holding a camera aimed at the presidential motorcade, seemingly filming or photographing the events as they unfolded. Her vantage point would have provided a clear, unobstructed view of the motorcade as it passed, and Kennedy was struck by gunfire. Unlike many witnesses, who either fled or sought cover after the shots were fired, the Babushka lady remained unusually composed. In the Zapruder film, one of the most famous visual records of the assassination, she can be seen standing still, while the crowd around her reacts in panic. This calmness in the face of chaos has added an aura of mystery to her identity. Witnesses who later reviewed photos of the scene noted that she did not seem to leave quickly after the shooting, which raises further questions about her intentions or state of mind. The Babushka lady was thought to have captured some of the most critical footage of the assassination, given her close proximity to the motorcade. However, despite public appeals from the FBI and other investigative bodies, she never came forward with any film or photographs. This absence of her film or photographic evidence has been one of the most frustrating elements of the case for investigators and researchers. If she did indeed capture the moment of the assassination, that footage could potentially offer new insights or clarify existing uncertainties. In 1970, Beverly Oliver, a nightclub singer in Dallas, claimed she was the Babushka lady. She stated that she had been filming the motorcade with a Super 8 camera, and that after the assassination, government agents confiscated her film, promising to return it, a promise that she claims was never fulfilled. However, Oliver's story has been met with skepticism. Her description of the camera she used, a Super 8 model, did not exist in 1963, and her recollection of events has been questioned by experts and witnesses. Despite her assertions, most researchers do not believe Oliver was the Babushka lady. Further complicating the mystery, no known footage from the Babushka lady has ever surfaced, even after exhaustive searches of archival material, private collections, and news footage. Conspiracy theories have flourished around her role, with some speculating that she may have been working for a government agency, a foreign power, or even involved in a conspiracy to assassinate the president. These theories argue that the lack of her footage could indicate an intentional suppression of evidence, though no hard proof supports these claims. Another theory suggests that she may simply have been an ordinary bystander, unaware of the significance of her presence or the footage she had captured. Perhaps, as some suggest, she never developed the film or didn't realize the importance of what she had filmed until much later. This has only deepened the mystery, as the assassination remains one of the most analyzed and debated events in modern history. In the absence of definitive answers, the Babushka lady remains an enduring figure in the labyrinth of conspiracy theories surrounding the JFK assassination. Despite the extensive investigations and numerous books, documentaries, and research efforts dedicated to uncovering her identity and the potential film she may have captured, the mystery endures. The Babushka lady stands as a symbol of the unresolved questions that continue to haunt the narrative of that fateful day in Dallas. The Voyages of St. Brendan, also known as Navigatio Sancti Brendani Abbatis,
or the Voyage of St. Brendan the Abbot,
is a medieval Christian narrative that tells the extraordinary adventures of St. Brendan,
an Irish monk from the 6th century,
as he embarks on a mystical sea voyage. St. Brendan, also known as Brendan the Navigator, became one of the most celebrated saints of Ireland. His seafaring legend evolved into a popular medieval Christian text, filled with allegory, fantastical elements, and spiritual symbolism. The tale is thought to have originated in the early Middle Ages, around the 9th century, and is part of the broader genre of Imram, or Irish sea voyage stories. In the story, Brendan, accompanied by a group of monks, sets sail on a quest to find the Terra Repromissionis Sanctorum, the promised land of the saints, a paradise on earth that some interpret as an early version of heaven. His journey lasts 7 years, during which he and his crew encounter a series of miraculous islands and supernatural occurrences. These include encounters with sea monsters, talking birds, floating crystal palaces, and even the discovery of a whale so large that it is mistaken for an island. The narrative's mix of Christian piety and fantastical elements led to centuries of intrigue, as some historians and explorers speculated whether St. Brendan's voyage had any basis in reality. This theory gained traction in the 20th century, particularly after adventurers like Tim Severin recreated the journey in the 1970s, using a boat modeled after the type of vessel Brendan would have sailed. Severin's successful transatlantic voyage from Ireland to Newfoundland bolstered claims that Irish monks could have been among the earliest Europeans to reach the New World. However, most scholars regard the Navigatio as a religious allegory rather than a historical account. The journey represents a metaphorical spiritual quest, with each island symbolizing different trials or lessons on the path to salvation. The story's emphasis on faith, perseverance, and divine intervention reflects the deep Christian worldview of the medieval period, with Brendan's travels serving as a journey toward enlightenment and communion with God. Despite the uncertainties surrounding its historical accuracy, the Voyage of St. Brendan remains one of the most enduring and fascinating mysteries of medieval literature, capturing the imaginations of readers with its blend of adventure, faith, and wonder.
Hey, have you ever heard of the Baigong pipes in China? They're one of the weirdest unsolved mysteries out there.
Yeah, I've read a little about them, but I never really understood the fuss. Aren't they just some ancient pipes? What's so strange about that?
Well, that's the thing. No one really knows what they are or where they came from. The Baigong pipes are these tubular structures found in caves near Mount Baigong in Qinghai province. They're embedded into the rock, and some are as thick as 40 centimeters. What's wild is that they're estimated to be over 5,000 years old. That's way before any known advanced civilization would have been able to make something like this.
Wait, 5,000 years? That does sound weird. So people think they're ancient plumbing systems or something?
Some do, but it's a lot more complicated than that. There's actually no evidence that the region around Mount Baigong was inhabited by any civilization advanced enough to create something like these pipes. The nearest known settlement back then was miles away. Plus, they're in this remote rocky area that's not exactly easy to access even today. So why would anyone build anything there, much less pipes?
So what's the leading theory then? I mean, how do pipes just end up in the middle of nowhere?
Well, that's where it gets interesting. Some people believe they might have been made by an ancient lost civilization that we don't know about. Others go even further and think they could be evidence of extraterrestrial activity, like aliens using these pipes for some kind of unknown purpose.
Aliens? That's a pretty big leap, don't you think? There has to be a more logical explanation.
You'd think so, right? Scientists have tried to analyze them, and some studies suggest the pipes could actually be natural formations. They say they might be fossilized tree roots or created by a unique geological process.
So it's just a weird natural occurrence, like some kind of rock formation?
That's one theory, but even that's not completely confirmed. Chemical analysis of the pipes shows high levels of iron and ferric oxide, which fits with a natural origin. But there's still a lot that doesn't quite add up. Like, why do the pipes have such precise shapes? And why are they found in these weird random places embedded in solid rock?
That does seem a bit too organized for something completely natural. But I guess it's still better than the alien idea.
True. But what keeps the mystery alive is the fact that we don't have definitive answers. The Baigong pipes could just be a natural phenomenon that we haven't fully figured out yet, or they could be something more mysterious, either man-made or, well, something else. The location itself adds to the intrigue with that pyramid-shaped mountain and how isolated the region is. People love to speculate when there's this much unknown involved.
Yeah, I can see why it captures people's imaginations. Even if it's natural, the fact that we can't explain it completely is what keeps the mystery going, right?
Exactly. It's like one of those mysteries that's fun to think about because it blurs the line between science and the unknown. Until there's solid proof, people are going to keep wondering. Ancient civilization, natural wonder, or something out of this world.
It's like a puzzle no one can solve. Maybe that's the real allure of the Baigong pipes. Every theory just opens up more questions.
Yeah, it's one of those rare mysteries that leaves the door open for all kinds of possibilities. And until we figure it out, it'll keep sparking debates and imaginations. Hey, have you ever heard of the Yuba County 5? It's one of the most bizarre unsolved mysteries out there.
I think I've heard bits and pieces, but I don't know the full story. What happened?
It's a chilling case. It started back in February 1978 when 5 men from Yuba City, California just vanished. They were Jack Madruga, Ted Wyer, Bill Sterling, Jack Hewitt, and Gary Mathias. All of them had some level of intellectual or psychiatric challenges, but they were functional. That night they went to Chico to watch a college basketball game, and afterward, they just disappeared. Their families never saw them again.
That sounds unsettling. Did they all disappear at the same time?
Yeah, and what makes it so strange is that they were last seen leaving the basketball game together.
They even stopped at a convenience store for snacks on the way back, but instead of going home, they drove way off course, deep into the Plumas National Forest, a remote mountainous area. Their car was found a few days later, abandoned in the snow, about 70 miles from where they were supposed to be. The car was in working condition. It had gas, but there was no sign of the men.
That's really odd. Why would they drive into the mountains like that?
That's one of the biggest mysteries. The men weren't dressed for the cold, and it didn't make any sense for them to head into such a remote area. None of them had any real experience in the wilderness either. The area was snowed in, so investigators were baffled. It's like they intentionally drove out there, but why, we don't know. Months later, in June 1978, some of their bodies were discovered, and things got even weirder. Ted Wyer's body was found inside a Forest Service trailer about 19 miles from the car. He had apparently survived for weeks, but he died of starvation and exposure, despite there being food and heat sources inside the trailer. He'd even lost around 100 pounds, which is crazy because there were enough supplies there to keep him alive for a long time. His feet were frostbitten, and he was wrapped in several layers of sheets. It's like he was trying to keep warm but never thought to use the resources around him.
That doesn't make any sense. Why wouldn't he eat or use the heat?
Exactly. It's one of the most baffling parts of the case. And it doesn't end there. They found the bodies of Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling about 11 miles away from the car, but their bodies had been out in the elements for months. They had likely succumbed to exposure soon after they left the car. Later, searchers found bones belonging to Jack Hewitt scattered not far from the trailer, but Gary Mathias, one of the group, was never found. He's the biggest mystery of all.
What do you mean? What was different about Gary?
Gary Mathias had a history of schizophrenia and needed medication to manage his condition. Unlike the others, he wasn't intellectually disabled, but he had psychiatric issues. There are theories that his condition might have played a role in what happened, but since his body was never found, no one knows what happened to him. Some even think he may have survived and wandered off somewhere. But without his medication, it's hard to say what state of mind he was in.
That's eerie, so no one has any real idea what happened to them.
There are theories, but nothing conclusive. Some people believe the group got lost and panicked in the storm that hit that night. Others speculate that they might have encountered someone or something that caused them to leave their car and head deeper into the mountains. Some even think foul play could have been involved, but there's no evidence to support it. The fact that they were found so far from the car, scattered over miles, only deepens the mystery. And why did Ted Wyer just waste away in a trailer stocked with food and fuel? None of it makes sense.
Wow, that's really disturbing. It sounds like something from a horror movie, but it's real life.
Yeah, it's one of those cases that's haunted people for decades. True crime fans still speculate about what might have happened. The Yuba County Five remains one of the most chilling and confusing disappearances in American history. The lack of answers just makes it more unsettling.
I can see why. It's one of those mysteries that will probably never fully be solved, huh?
Unfortunately, that seems to be the case. Even after all these years, it still leaves people scratching their heads.
Have you ever heard of the Great Boston Molasses Flood?
It sounds almost absurd, but it was a real disaster in 1919.
Molasses flood? That does sound bizarre. How did it even happen?
It was this massive tank, holding about 2.3 million gallons of molasses in Boston's North End. The molasses was used to make industrial alcohol, which was in high demand during World War I. On January 15, 1919, the tank burst, sending a wave of molasses through the streets at around 35 miles per hour.
Wait, 35 miles per hour? That's faster than I imagined molasses could move. What was the aftermath like?
Oh, It was devastating. The flood killed 21 people, injured 150, and destroyed buildings and vehicles in its path. Rescue efforts were a nightmare because the molasses was so thick and sticky that it made everything more difficult. To make things worse, the molasses started hardening in the cold, slowing down the cleanup and making it even more challenging to pull people out.
That's horrifying. But why did the tank fail? Did no one see this coming? That's where it gets interesting. The exact cause is still debated, but there were clear signs that the tank was poorly constructed. The company that built it, United States Industrial Alcohol, USIA, rushed the job back in 1915. Apparently, the tank had been leaking from the start, and they only patched it up by painting it brown so the leaks wouldn't be so visible.
That sounds like criminal negligence. Was there an investigation?
Yes, and it revealed that the tank was structurally weak. They didn't even properly test the tank before filling it. Many believe the inferior quality of the steel and the lack of a qualified engineer during construction led to the disaster. But here's where the debate comes in. Some historians also think temperature changes played a role. You see, the temperature had suddenly warmed up that day, from freezing to around 40 degrees Fahrenheit. This could have caused the molasses to expand, building up pressure inside the already fragile tank.
So it could have been the temperature change combined with the structural flaws.
Exactly. It's likely a combination of factors. Another theory suggests that the molasses may have been fermenting, which would have produced gas, increasing the internal pressure even more. But in the end, the USIA was found responsible in court for the disaster, though they initially tried to blame anarchists, claiming sabotage. That was dismissed, of course. They ended up paying significant damages after a lengthy legal battle.
Anarchists? That's quite the reach. So did the disaster lead to any major changes in safety regulations?
Yes, it became a wake-up call for industrial safety and building regulations. The disaster highlighted how reckless corporate behavior and lax oversight could have catastrophic consequences. It's one of those early moments in US history where people realized the need for stricter regulations on construction and public safety, especially with industrial projects.
It's crazy to think how something as mundane as molasses could cause such a huge disaster. I bet the cleanup took forever.
It did. They were cleaning molasses off the streets for months. Even years later, on hot summer days, locals said they could still smell molasses in the neighborhood. It's become part of Boston's lore, equal parts tragedy and strange curiosity.
Have you ever heard of the Phaistos disc? It's this really mysterious artifact from ancient Crete that no one has been able to fully understand.
The Phaistos disc? No, I don't think I've heard of that. What's so mysterious about it?
It's a clay disc, about 15 centimeters in diameter, discovered in 1908 by an archaeologist named Luigi Pernier at the Minoan Palace of Phaistos on Crete. What makes it so intriguing is the spiral arrangement of symbols on both sides of the disc. 241 symbols in total, grouped into 61 sections. The symbols themselves are unlike anything else we've found from that time, or really from anywhere. They depict things like human figures, animals, plants, and some abstract shapes, but no one's been able to figure out exactly what they mean.
That sounds fascinating. So is it some kind of writing system? Why can't they decipher it?
That's the big question. Many scholars believe it could be a form of writing, but since there's no other example of these symbols anywhere, it's really hard to compare it to anything. Some think it could be a religious text, a legal document, or even a hymn. Others suggest it might be a calendar or some form of record keeping. But because we haven't found anything else like it and the symbols don't match any known script, like linear A or linear B, it's been impossible to crack.
So there's nothing similar to it from the Minoan period?
No, not really. That's what makes it such a puzzle.
It was created around 1700 BCE during the height of the Minoan civilization, but it doesn't resemble their known writing systems. What's also strange is how it was made.
The symbols were stamped into the clay using pre-formed seals, almost like an ancient form of movable type. This stamping method was unheard of in that period, making it one of the earliest known examples of that technique.
Wait, you're saying it was stamped, like early printing?
Exactly. It's kind of like an ancient version of printing. Each symbol was pressed into the clay individually using a stamp, suggesting that the symbols were part of a standardized system. That's why some people think it could have been used for mass production, or that the symbols were part of a broader system that we just haven't found other examples of. but there's no real evidence of other writing in this style from the Minoans, which only adds to the mystery.
Couldn't it be a forgery? I mean, it sounds almost too unique to be real.
That theory has come up before. Some skeptics believe it might be a modern forgery created around the time it was found. But most experts believe it's genuine, based on the context in which it was discovered, and the fact that no solid evidence has emerged to prove it's fake. The craftsmanship, the symbols, and the fact that it was buried deep in the ruins of the palace all point to it being authentic.
So, what are some of the theories about its meaning? Anything convincing?
There are tons of theories. Some link it to Linear A, which was the script used by the Minoans, though that script is also undeciphered, so that doesn't get us very far. Others have tried connecting it to Linear B, the script used later by the Mycenaeans, but again, the symbols don't match up. There's even been speculation that it could represent some kind of foreign influence, that maybe the script came from a different culture, possibly one that we don't know about yet.
It's wild to think that after all this time, we still don't know what it says. Has anything like it been found elsewhere?
No, that's part of the problem. The Phaistos disc is completely unique. No other examples of this script or style of writing have been found anywhere, not even in other Minoan sites. It's like this isolated artifact that doesn't fit into any known cultural or historical patterns. That's what makes it such an enduring mystery.
And we still haven't made any progress in deciphering it.
Not really. There have been attempts, but nothing definitive. Without more examples of the script or some sort of Rosetta Stone equivalent to help us understand the language, we're kind of stuck. Some scholars argue it might not even be a written language in the traditional sense. Maybe it's a symbolic system or a pictographic script. Others think it could have been used for a very specific purpose, like a ritual object or a ceremonial calendar. And that might be why we don't see more of it.
So, it's essentially this ancient puzzle that no one's been able to solve for over a century.
Exactly. It's one of those archaeological finds that just defies explanation. The Phaistos disc has become this symbol of the lost mysteries of ancient civilizations. Every few years, someone comes up with a new theory, but nothing has fully explained it yet. It's a reminder of how much we still don't know about ancient cultures like the Minoans, and how some secrets may stay hidden forever.
Have you ever heard of the mystery surrounding the Ulfbert Viking swords?
Oh yeah, I've heard a little about them. Weren't they some kind of legendary swords used by the Vikings?
Exactly. The Ulfbert swords are famous because they were far superior to other weapons of the time. We're talking about the 9th to 11th centuries here, and most swords back then were made from pretty basic iron. But the Ulfbert swords were made from something way more advanced, high-quality steel, almost like modern steel.
Wait, modern steel? I thought that kind of technology wasn't around back then.
That's what makes these swords so mysterious. The Vikings had access to a type of steel called crucible steel, which is much purer and stronger than what anyone else in Europe was using at the time. It's the kind of steel that can only be made by heating iron to extremely high temperatures, around 1,600 degrees Celsius, which would have been really hard to achieve with the technology in Northern Europe.
So how did the Vikings get their hands on this steel? Did they figure out some secret method for making it?
That's one of the big questions. Some historians think the Vikings may have traded for the steel with merchants from the Middle East or Central Asia. There was already a lot of trade going on back then, and places like Persia and India had been making high-quality crucible steel for centuries. Think Damascus steel, for example. It's possible the Vikings got their materials, or maybe even learned forging techniques through these trade networks.
So the swords could have been made using Middle Eastern steel. That's crazy to think about. Vikings using steel from places like Persia.
It is. But the name Ulfbert is also key here. It's stamped right into the blade, like a signature. The thing is, we're not sure if Ulfbert was the name of a person, a group of craftsmen, or maybe even a workshop.
So there's no record of who exactly made these swords?
Nope, and that's part of the mystery. Over 170 of these swords have been found all across Europe, and they weren't all made to the same high standards. Some are clear forgeries, people trying to copy the Ulfbert name to sell their swords for more money but using much lower quality iron. It's kind of like how counterfeit luxury goods work today.
That's wild. It must have been a big deal to own a real Ulfbert sword then.
Oh, for sure. These swords were a status symbol in Viking society. A sword wasn't just a weapon, it was a sign of wealth and power. Only the richest and most powerful warriors could afford a real Ulfbert, so owning one would have been huge flex, so to speak.
And we still don't know how they made them or who was behind it all.
Right, despite all the studies and analyses over the years, the full story behind the Ulfbert swords remains unsolved. Some experts think there might have been a small number of European smiths who figured out how to make crucible steel, but that's still just a theory. The swords raise so many questions about trade, technology, and craftsmanship in the Viking Age, and we just don't have all the answers yet.
It's like a medieval mystery that we're still trying to crack. I love that. These swords are a perfect example of how advanced people could be, even back in the so-called Dark Ages.
Exactly, it just goes to show that history isn't always what we expect. The Ulfbert swords are a reminder that there were always people pushing the boundaries of what was possible, even in the most unexpected places.
Heard of the Knights of the Golden Circle treasure? It's one of those mysteries that's been around for over a century.
Yeah, vaguely. Something about a secret group hiding treasure after the Civil War, right? But I never really dug into it. What's the story behind it?
So, the Knights of the Golden Circle, or KGC, was actually a secret society that formed in the mid-1800s. Their main goal was to expand the southern states' influence, particularly through spreading slavery into new territories like Mexico and the Caribbean. As the Civil War broke out, the KGC got deeply involved in guerrilla tactics, espionage, and basically anything to help the Confederacy. But here's where it gets really interesting. The legend goes that they were also stockpiling a massive treasure.
Wait, treasure? How did they supposedly get this wealth?
Well, according to the story, they raised money from wealthy Southern sympathizers and amassed fortunes from looting during the war. Gold, silver, jewels, you name it. The idea was that they were going to use this treasure to fund a second uprising if the South lost the war. Some people believe that even after the Confederacy's defeat, the KGC went underground and continued protecting these hidden caches, waiting for the right time to try again.
So, where is all this treasure supposed to be? Did anyone ever find it?
That's the mystery. Over the years, there have been countless treasure hunters trying to find it. There are stories about coded maps, symbols on rocks, secret tunnels. It sounds like something out of an Indiana Jones movie. Some believe these hidden clues were left behind by KGC members to mark where the treasure was buried. In fact, some even think that famous outlaws like Jesse James were part of the KGC and helped hide the loot. Jesse James? That's wild. I thought he was just a bandit, not some secret society member.
Yeah, that's one of the more interesting parts of the legend. Jesse James was supposedly high up in the ranks of the KGC, and some say he hid treasure in various places across the country. There are even claims that he faked his death and lived on, guarding the treasure in secret. There's no concrete proof, but treasure hunters are convinced there's something to it. That's the thing. No one has ever found any definitive proof. There have been some people who claim to have discovered small caches or clues, but nothing that points to the massive hoard that the legend promises. Skeptics argue that the KGC was more about political power than stockpiling treasure, and they say there's no real historical evidence to suggest they hid a fortune, but the lack of proof doesn't stop people from looking.
Sounds like another one of those lost treasure myths that just refuses to die.
Some people really believe it's out there, though. There are even modern-day treasure hunters who devote their lives to deciphering the clues, checking out old KGC meeting spots, or exploring caves in remote areas. Whether it's real or not, the story is captivating enough to keep the search going after all these years.
I can see why people are fascinated. I mean, who wouldn't want to stumble across a hidden treasure chest full of gold?
Even if it's all just a myth, the KGC treasure has become part of the fabric of American folklore. The idea that there could be massive caches of Confederate gold hidden away, waiting to be found, is enough to keep treasure hunters intrigued and digging, literally, for the truth. Have you ever heard about the Franklin expedition? It's one of the most mysterious stories in the history of Arctic exploration.
Yeah, wasn't it that British expedition where they were trying to find the Northwest Passage, but all the ships and crew just disappeared, right?
Exactly. It was led by Sir John Franklin in 1845. They took 2 ships, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, with 129 men in total. Their goal was to discover a sea route connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans through the Arctic. These ships were pretty advanced for their time. They had reinforced hulls to deal with the ice and even steam engines. Plus, they carried enough provisions to last a few years. But despite all that, none of the crew survived.
That's insane. So what happened? Did they just vanish or were there any clues?
It took years before anyone found anything. At first, when they didn't return, search expeditions were sent out. Eventually, there were some Inuit accounts that helped. They talked about seeing white men dragging boats over the ice, clearly suffering from starvation. Then British expeditions started finding scattered relics. A note dated April 1848, for example, which revealed that Franklin had died in June 1847. The remaining crew had abandoned the ships to try and walk south.
So they abandoned the ships? Was it because they were trapped in the ice?
Most likely. The Arctic ice is brutal and it's believed the ships got locked in it, but the real mystery is what exactly happened after they abandoned ship. The note said 24 men had already died by the time they left the ships. Later, investigators found graves, remains of other crew members, and even some personal belongings scattered over the harsh landscape.
I've read that lead poisoning was involved. Wasn't that from the food they carried?
Yeah, that's a big theory. They had these canned provisions, and the solder used to seal the tins might have been contaminated with lead. When scientists examined some of the remains, they found incredibly high levels of lead in their bones. It would have affected their mental and physical health, confusion, fatigue, even madness. On top of that, they were suffering from scurvy and starvation, and the evidence suggests it got so desperate that they resorted to cannibalism.
Lead poisoning, scurvy, cannibalism. It sounds like everything that could go wrong did. But what about the ships themselves?
That's the crazy part. For over 160 years, the ships were missing. Then, in 2014, underwater archaeologists found the wreck of HMS Erebus in shallow water near King William Island. 2 years later, in 2016, they found HMS Terror, almost perfectly preserved at the bottom of an Arctic bay. These discoveries were huge. They gave us a lot more information about what happened, but they also raised new questions. Why were the ships where they were found? Did the crew return to the ships after abandoning them? There are still a lot of pieces missing.
It's wild how long the mystery lasted. Even with modern technology, it took that long to find the ships. But with all that we know now, are there still unsolved parts of the story?
Definitely. We still don't know exactly how many men made it after abandoning the ships or what their final days were like. There are gaps in the timeline, and while we have some insight from the Inuit accounts and the artifacts, there's still a lot we don't fully understand. The wrecks might hold more clues, but the Arctic is so harsh that exploring them is a slow process.
It's such a tragic story, especially with how close they might have been to surviving. It really shows just how dangerous those early polar explorations were.
Yeah, it's a reminder of the limits of human endurance, even with all the technology they had at the time. The Franklin expedition is a mix of incredible ambition and terrible disaster. It still fascinates historians and adventurers today.
Hey, have you ever heard of the vanishing village of Anjikuni in Canada? It's one of the creepiest unsolved mysteries out there.
The Vanishing Village? No, I haven't. What happened there?
So, back in the 1930s, there was this small Inuit village near Lake Anjikuni in northern Canada. One day, the entire population, men, women, children, just vanished without a trace, completely gone, and no one has been able to explain what happened to them.
Wait, the entire village? That sounds wild. How did people find out?
It all started with a fur trapper named Joe LaBelle. He was travelling through the area in November 1930 and decided to stop at the village, as he had done before. When he arrived, everything was silent. The place was eerily quiet. No people, no movement. He checked inside the huts, and he found half-eaten meals still on the tables and food cooking over the fires, as if everyone had just left suddenly. All their belongings, even their rifles, were left behind.
Rifles? In a remote area like that? No one would leave their weapons behind unless something major happened. So did anyone ever figure out where they went?
That's the thing, no one knows. LaBelle was so freaked out by what he saw that he went to the nearest RCMP post to report it. There's even more to the story. Supposedly LaBelle found the village's sled dogs dead, starved to death, still tied to their posts, and some versions say that even the graves in the village's cemetery had been dug up with the bodies missing. And to top it all off, strange lights were reported in the sky around the time the village disappeared.
Wait, lights in the sky? Are we talking UFOs or something?
Some people think so. The lights have fueled speculation that maybe the villagers were taken by extraterrestrials. It's one of the theories, though it's a bit out there. Others suggest it could have been something like a natural disaster. Maybe they fled because of some environmental threat. But that doesn't explain why they left everything behind so suddenly. What about the RCMP? Did they ever find anything?
That's the weird part. The RCMP supposedly investigated but never found any sign of the villagers. Some people claim they never even made an official report. The police later dismissed the story, saying it's just an urban legend, and they insist there was no investigation or missing village at all. But there's no denying that LaBelle's story and the mystery around it has been passed down for years.
It sounds like one of those stories that gets bigger and weirder every time it's told, but still, if it's true, that's pretty chilling. It reminds me of the Roanoke colony in the US, where people just disappeared without a trace too.
Exactly. It has the same kind of unsettling vibe, and some of the details in this story make it feel like a supernatural thriller. The abandoned village, missing bodies from graves, and those mysterious lights in the sky. I think that's why it's stuck around for so long in Canadian folklore. It's a mystery that just refuses to be solved.
So you don't think it's real? Like, it's just an old legend?
Hard to say. Skeptics have pointed out that there are no official records of an investigation, and some think it might have been an exaggeration by journalists looking for a spooky story. It could be a case of something getting blown way out of proportion. But then again, if you think about how remote and harsh that area is, it's not impossible that something strange happened. In that kind of wilderness, anything could go wrong, and no one would know.
True. The Arctic is pretty unforgiving. Maybe the truth is somewhere between an exaggerated tale and something genuinely bizarre. Either way, it's kind of cool how these unsolved mysteries keep people guessing, even decades later.
Totally. Whether it's real or just folklore, the vanishing village of Unjikuni taps into that fear of the unknown. What could cause an entire community to just disappear, leaving everything behind? It's the kind of mystery that sticks with you.
Hey, have you ever heard of the Dancing Forest in Kaliningrad?
The Dancing Forest? No, I haven't. What's that about?
Oh, it's this really unique place in Russia, specifically on the Curonian Spit, which is this long strip of land between the Baltic Sea and the Curonian Lagoon. The forest is famous because its pine trees grow in these super weird, twisted shapes. The trunks aren't straight like normal trees. They curve, spiral, and even make loops in some spots. That's why they call it the Dancing Forest.
That sounds pretty bizarre. Why do the trees grow like that? Is there a specific reason?
That's the interesting part. No one really knows for sure. There are a few theories, though. Some scientists think it has to do with a combination of natural factors like the wind, the soil, and the shifting sand dunes. Others have a more unusual theory, suggesting that maybe some kind of caterpillar damaged the trees as they were growing, affecting their shape.
Caterpillars? That's a new one. But wait, don't people say that geomagnetic forces could be involved too?
Exactly, that's another popular theory. Some think there's something strange about the Earth's magnetic fields in that area, which could have affected how the trees grew. But honestly, none of these ideas have been fully proven. It's one of those natural mysteries that keeps people guessing.
Wow, so there's no definitive explanation yet. That's really cool. I bet it's given rise to a lot of legends, right?
Oh yeah, there's a ton of folklore surrounding the forest. One of the most well-known stories is that the trees are enchanted, shaped by some kind of mystical energy. People say that if you walk through the forest and make a wish, it might come true because of the forest's magical powers. Some even believe the spiraling trees symbolize some kind of spiritual transformation or represent Earth's energy in a visual form.
That's wild! It sounds like the forest is almost otherworldly. Is it really old? Like, has it been there for centuries?
Actually, no, it's relatively recent. The forest was planted in the 1960s as part of a conservation project. The Curonian Spit is a fragile environment, and the trees were planted to help stabilize the shifting sand dunes. It's part of a UNESCO World Heritage Site now because the whole area is ecologically significant. So it's not just about the trees, but the whole environment around it, huh?
Exactly. The Curonian Spit itself is an incredible place. It's home to a ton of wildlife, including some rare bird species. Nature lovers go there not only to see the dancing forest, but also to experience the whole landscape. The dunes, the lagoon, the forests. The forest is just one piece of this beautiful and mysterious area.
Sounds like a place I'd love to visit someday. It's rare to find a spot that mixes both natural mystery and beauty like that.
Definitely. The dancing forest is such a unique mix of science, nature, and legend all wrapped into one. You can't help but feel like there's something magical about it when you're walking through those twisted trees.
Hey, have you heard about the Death Valley Germans? It's such a tragic and eerie disappearance.
No, I haven't. What happened?
It's a case from 1996 where 4 German tourists vanished while exploring Death Valley. There was a couple, Egbert Rimkus and Cornelia Meyer, and they had Rimkus's 10-year-old son, Georg, and Cornelia's 4-year-old son, Max, with them. They were on a road trip through California, just enjoying the sights.
That sounds like a great trip, but what went wrong?
Well, they were in a rented minivan, and they decided to take a detour into some remote parts of the park. You know how big and barren Death Valley is? It's one of the harshest environments in the US. Temperatures can soar above 120 degrees Fahrenheit, and there's barely any water. Anyway, they apparently underestimated the dangers of the desert.
That doesn't sound good. Where did they end up?
They drove into a really remote area near Anvil Spring Canyon. Months later, in October 1996, a park ranger found their minivan stuck in sand. It had 3 flat tires, was out of gas, and had a lot of personal belongings still inside, souvenirs, maps, even food wrappers, but no sign of the tourists.
So they just abandoned the van and disappeared?
Yeah, exactly. It triggered a huge search, but nothing turned up for years. It's like they vanished into thin air. People were baffled by how no trace of them could be found in such an open area. But Death Valley is deceptively vast, with some parts being incredibly remote and rugged.
I can't imagine how terrifying that must have been for them. Did they ever find out what happened?
Not until 2009. That's when 2 hikers discovered human remains in the same area where the van had been found. DNA testing confirmed that the remains belonged to Egbert and his son Georg, but they didn't find anything from Cornelia or Max. The authorities believe they all likely died from exposure and dehydration. Death Valley can be absolutely unforgiving, especially if you don't have enough water or you're lost.
It's still a mystery. Some speculate they were just curious and wanted to explore the more remote parts of the park, not realizing how dangerous it could be. Maybe they were following an outdated or inaccurate map, or they got lost and tried to walk to safety after the van got stuck. But with temperatures soaring, even a short walk in that heat could be fatal without enough water.
I guess it shows how important it is to be prepared, especially in places like that. It's crazy to think that they disappeared for over a decade without anyone finding them.
Exactly. The desert can swallow people up, and no one ever knows. Their story is one of the most haunting disappearances in Death Valley's history, a chilling reminder of how dangerous nature can be when we're unprepared or underestimated.
It's scary to think about. You hear about stuff like that happening, but when it's real people, it hits differently.
Yeah, it really does. They were just ordinary tourists looking for adventure, but Death Valley can turn deadly fast.
Have you ever heard about the Flannan Isles Lighthouse Mystery? It's one of those unsolved cases that really creeps me out.
Yeah, I've heard bits and pieces about it. Isn't that the one where 3 lighthouse keepers just disappeared without a trace? What exactly happened?
Exactly.
It happened in December 1900. The Flannan Isles are these remote rocky islands in Scotland, and the lighthouse on Eileen Moor was supposed to be manned by 3 keepers, James Duckett, Thomas Marshall and Donald MacArthur. But when a relief vessel came to check on them on December 26th, no one was there. The whole place was abandoned. It was like they'd just vanished.
Vanished? That's weird. What did the relief crew find when they got there?
That's the strangest part. The lighthouse was in an eerie state. The clocks had stopped, the fire had burned out, and there was an uneaten meal just sitting on the table. It was like they'd left in a hurry, but without any signs of a struggle. It was like time had frozen and they just disappeared into thin air.
So, no signs of violence or anything like that?
No, nothing like that.
But when they checked the logbook, it got even stranger. The last entries were made in the days leading up to their disappearance, and they talked about a terrible storm battering the island. Marshall, the second in command, wrote that the storm was the worst he'd seen in 20 years, and he noted that all 3 men were praying for their safety, which was odd since MacArthur was apparently not the religious type. But here's the kicker. No other ships in the area reported a storm at that time.
Wait, so they were describing a storm that didn't actually happen?
Yep, at least not according to weather records. The mystery deepens there.
One theory is that a massive rogue wave or a series of huge waves swept them off the island while they were outside trying to secure things during a real storm. When the investigators looked at the west landing area, they found signs of damage as if something powerful had hit the shore.
But all 3 of them would have been outside at the same time. That's against protocol, right?
Exactly. One of them should have stayed inside. But maybe they were all trying to deal with some emergency, like equipment getting damaged and they didn't have time to think about protocol. There's a story that suggests MacArthur might have been caught in something dangerous outside. And the others ran out to save him, and then a wave took them all.
That could explain it, but it still feels off, doesn't it? Like, no bodies were ever found.
None, not a trace. Some people believe that the waves took them far out to sea, so their bodies just never washed up. But you're right, there's still this unsettling sense that something's missing in the story. Some people have suggested more far-fetched explanations. Like MacArthur, who was known to be hot-tempered, might have snapped and killed the others, then either fell or threw himself into the sea. But again, no real evidence supports that.
I've heard people even talk about supernatural explanations. You know, like ghost ships or sea creatures or even something otherworldly. I guess the isolation of the island kind of fuels that imagination.
Oh, absolutely. The remoteness of the Flannan Isles has definitely added to the eerie nature of the case. Some theories involve supernatural forces, like the idea that the men were taken by some kind of sea spirit or ghostly force. The fact that the lighthouse keepers lived in total isolation on this barren, stormy island kind of lends itself to those sorts of legends, but obviously none of that can be proven.
It's so eerie.
And the fact that this happened over 100 years ago, and we still have no solid answers, I guess that's part of what keeps people talking about it.
Exactly. It's one of those mysteries where, no matter how many plausible theories are thrown out there, nothing quite fits perfectly. The combination of the strange weather reports, the abandoned lighthouse, and the complete lack of physical evidence leaves so much room for speculation. And that's probably why it remains one of the most famous maritime mysteries to this day.
It's like one of those stories that just keeps you wondering. A real-life mystery with no satisfying ending.
And that's exactly why the disappearance of the Flannan Isles lighthouse keepers continues to fascinate people even now. There's just something deeply unsettling about the idea that these men vanished into thin air, leaving only a few cryptic clues behind.
Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the unexplained. We hope these mysteries have sparked your curiosity and encouraged you to delve deeper into the unknown. Until next time, stay curious, stay vigilant, and never stop seeking the truth.